That's what HoliHub is really about, the holistic wellness, right? It's to provide tools when we're floating off the ground. What do we do now, right? How do I get back? How do I ground?
Yo, I'm Bryce the Third.
And I'm Liz McKean.
And you are now tuned in to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. Here we dive into all the recovery stories from around the world.
And we talk about all pathways because there's no one right way to recover.
If you've been with us for a while, you know how powerful stories are. So get ready for your community to get just a little bigger today.
We are so glad that you're here. Let's get into the show.
Such a beautiful day to have an episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. Liz, what is going on?
Ooh, everything was unexpected about that little intro. Let's see what's going on. We got a Monday upon us, and it's a busy one, but a good one. It's feeling very autumn-y, which I'm excited about. And yeah, I think so far, excellent vibes in this little podcast room of ours. How is your energy, Bryce the Third?
My energy is not bad at all. Always keeping you on your toes. Expect the unexpected. I kind of miss you. Sometimes we don't release the episodes sequentially all the time. This one might come out before the one that I did solo, but doing a solo episode is so different than doing episodes together. Down to everything, including the spiel that you give the guests. Because I just told my mans, I'm pressing record. Let's go.
I'm like, I will prepare you for every potential thing that might happen.
And it was perfect. Funny. So it's an energy that you bring that can definitely be missed when we record.
Oh, aren't you sweet?
Yeah, so I'm glad we're together again, the Yin Yang twins back to take over the world.
Me too.
Man, today's guest is pretty cool.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation and learn a little bit more. I've kind of scratched the surface of this person's story a little bit by having, like a little 30. It's like a 30-40 minute call that we have, but I'm super excited to dig in, and I'm super excited for you all listening to dig in too, because this will be an exciting story. So who do we have here with us today, Liz?
Well, we have the wonderful Shimi who is the founder and executive director of HoliHub, which is a Denver-based nonprofit dedicated to holistic recovery. And I'm excited too. This is the first time I've been able to meet this wonderful person, but I was looking at his website, and even just like the FAQ section of his website, I was like, yeah, like nodding my head the whole time. So if you can get that reaction from FAQs, wait till we have a convo. So Shimi, it's so nice to meet you. How are you doing today?
Oh, Liz, Bryce, it's so good to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. You guys got great energy. I'm really looking forward to sitting down and talking.
Thank you.
Yeah. The doggo is back there taking a nap on the couch for those watching on YouTube, hanging out and chilling.
He's part of my therapy. Part of my recovery. I swear to God.
Same. I'm with you there. Yeah, the emotional support is real coming from our canine friends.
It's true.
For sure.
Yeah, I got an emotional support tarantula.
You look like you have an emotional support blanket happening right now.
What's crazy is, so if y'all are watching on YouTube, I do have this blanket. It's actually my girl's blanket, but it's not even cold. It's cold down here in the basement.
Just comfy.
So I got my little tea. I got my little... Yeah, I'm snuggly today.
Serve coziness.
I'm snuggly today.
We all need a hug sometimes, even if it's just from ourselves, Bryce.
Shimi, what are the things that you reach for when you need to show up for yourself in a way that holds you?
Wow, that was a great question. Honestly, I do grab blankets sometimes. Sometimes I just want blankets and pillows on the soft couch, and just jump in. And there's a lot of science behind the sensory comfort of being held or wrapped. I mean, you see it with babies, right? Being swaddled. There's science behind that. So I definitely, the physical touch and both of human contact, canine contact, but also just blankets and pillows and being comfortable really can ground me when I feel like my feet are kind of lifting off the ground a little bit, and I need some weight to bring me back.
Yeah, I definitely can float off of the earth. I had a friend and she had bought me a ball of copper because I could tend to like
Hmm.
really like be ungrounded sometimes, and sometimes like I need those things, those touch bases, those touchstones that remind me of like where I'm at to keep me from floating, because I can get really like esoteric, philosophical, spiritual, and it's just like, yo, wait a minute, like what's happening right now? Yeah.
Yeah. And it can start off as a good thing, right? Like esoteric, philosophical is not a bad thing, but then, when you lose the structure of it and you just
Mm.
go to the lift off,
Yeah.
right? It's like, well, am I just going to be floating in outer space, or like what's going to bring me back down?
Yeah.
So it's, and that's what HoliHub is really about, the holistic wellness, right? It's to provide tools when we're floating off the ground. What do we do now? Right?
Mm.
How do I get back? How do I ground? Do I wrap myself in blankets? Do I pull my big dog on top of me? Or do I go outside and stand barefoot in my grass,
Mm.
or even the concrete in front? So that's really what it's about. It's about providing wellness actions that can be taken in all
Mm.
different circumstances. It's something that, for me personally, and just my journey through recovery, that I felt that was lacking when I was at least starting out. And I just kind of, through my community, because I did grow up around holistic practitioners and medical practitioners as well, but that leaned more towards the alternative medicine side of things. So it, through that community, whether it's addiction or some other kind of compulsive behavior or anxiety or depression, there are tools out there that don't come in pill format
Mhm.
Mm.
that you can use and incorporate into your life to really just help you stay balanced. And when we're balanced, everything's better, right? No matter what's going on around us, right? Because shit happens. I don't
Yeah.
know. Can I
Mhm.
curse here?
Go
Shit
for
It's
it.
too late
happens,
now.
right?
No,
Shit
you good.
happens, and like life gets hard sometimes. But
Yeah.
if you have these tools in your toolbox, you can at least even out a little bit. And I find that that helps you deal with life as it comes at you. And it helps you, you know, it helps you from going back to those patterns, those thought patterns and those actions that only make things worse,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? They feel good at the moment, but
Yeah.
and right, you hear that all the time. Well, it was my solution,
Mm.
right? Right, it's your solution until you realize that that solution on a grand scale is actually destroying your life, right? But
Right.
these
Yeah.
other
Right.
practices can be your solution, and you can expand them and use them as many times as you want. And
Mhm.
you're not building up tolerance, and you're if anything, you're getting better at using them, right? So the
Mm.
tolerance is going down. You're like, oh, a minute of meditation now brings me down from level 10 anger, where it used to need maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or I
Yeah.
couldn't control it at all to even bring myself to a quiet space.
Mm.
Yeah. It's those tools. It's like, I feel like for a long time for me, the concept of like, get sober was just like stop drinking. And
Mhm.
if my response even internally was like, okay, but this is the only thing that solves my problem, the response that I was receiving was like, okay, well then also stop having the problem. It was never just like, okay, well here's an alternate solution. It was just like, okay, well you're wrong to be doing this is the solution. You're wrong to be having the problem to begin with. And it's like, okay, this is just not even appealing. That I'm not even going to go in any direction that would take away my one salve for this pain that I'm in. But I feel like more and more, because there are people like you in the world who are like, the thing I needed wasn't there, so I'm going to create it. I think that I hope that more and more people are coming up into, considering sobriety or recovery, whatever that means to them, and are able to see that there are tools, and that they are not the problem, and that they don't have to just eliminate any needs that they have. They can just meet it in a way that's going to be more loving for themselves. And it seems like you are, an example of that. Build what you
I'm
needed.
I'm trying. I'm trying. And I love what you said, whether it's recovery or sobriety or whatever it means to you, right?
Mhm.
And Bryce said earlier that we are who we are. We can't do it wrong, right? And I
Yeah.
love those two
Yeah.
concepts put together, right? Because who am I to judge your recovery, right? And HoliHub is open to all pathways. And 12 steps have been a part of my recovery. I mean, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. God bless the 12 steps. And also, it was not my long-term solution, because there's like open spaces, white spaces that just I wasn't being fulfilled in. And everyone, I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like there's so much good there, and it really did save my life. What I found for personally, and this is going back into a little bit of my story, is that I was in a 12-step program, and I had a number of years of recovery and sobriety, because I consider them two different things. Right? There's abstinence, which is sobriety, and then there's recovery, which is doing the work. Right? I know some miserable people who are abstinent. They're not really. I don't think they're in recovery. They might think they are, and you know what? Again, who am I to tell them otherwise? I don't know what's in their head and in their heart. But for me, I wasn't in a 12-step program. I was completely abstinent from everything. My sponsor told me I couldn't even, like, if I had a cold, I couldn't take like Dayquil, because I think there's like traces of alcohol in it, right? Or you can't eat something that was marinated in wine or things like that, right? And that's part of the program, and that's fine. What happened is, as I started moving away from the being really immersed in it, right? Because Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, all the anonymous programs, like it's really a lifestyle, right? Where your focus is on, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. You identify every time, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. At HoliHub, we identify with anything else. You can be like, I walk in and my name is Shimi, and today I identify as someone learning patience, right? Or today I identify as a son or a brother, right? We're so much more than our worst compulsions, right? So while I understand that it's important to accept our faults as well, right? That, I use, or I have a compulsive abuse of a certain type of substance, or not even a substance, just pattern of action, right? It could be gambling, it could be sex, it could be, addiction covers so many things. It's really a disease of the mind, not necessarily the substance itself or what you're ruminating over.
Yeah.
So as I moved away from the program, and with the consultation of the doctor and the therapist and a number of other coaches in my life that I rely on, I started using some plant medicine in a way that would not take, but supplement and complement some of the issues I was having. Maybe mitigating some of the effects, right? And as soon as I started going in that pathway, I found that my support system at AA disappeared. I was no longer welcome in the meetings. And if I was welcome in the meetings, I had to lie about, and like all of a sudden, now that's like the antithesis of the whole program, which is integrity, right?
Yeah.
So I felt very isolated. And, we've seen through medical studies, right, that the opposite of addiction is isolation, right, is loneliness. Right? The rats that are in a cage by themselves will keep taking the heroin water until they die. But if you put them into a community of rats, they don't touch the heroin water, right? Because they have community. And all of a sudden, the community that I built around my sobriety, around my recovery, was gone. And I felt like a refugee. I was lost. I had no home. And it was really hard for me to build a recovery support system outside of that. Again, I couldn't go, in good conscience. I respect the AA program so much. I couldn't go in and raise my hand and be like, I'm here and I'm sober, because technically I don't know that I am. So, and I also couldn't go in and lie about it, because that was the antithesis to my own, beliefs and morality and trying to be a better person and live in integrity. So I was able to find a community, but it took a while. And I had to almost create it from scratch. And during that time, there was a few year period, I relapsed on opiates. And I'm not going to say that it was because I didn't have, because I couldn't go into AA, and I'm like, it was because I was resting on my laurels. I got cocky. I thought I had it all beat, like, and that's the danger in the harm reduction model, is that, like, oh, well, I was able to, use cannabis as a sleep aid or an anti-anxiety, and I wasn't, waking up being like, oh, when can I use it again? I'm like, oh, I'm probably fine with everything. And that's
Therefore,
just
all
not true.
better. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm cured.
Yeah.
And
Miracle.
so there was definitely, I believe heavily in experiential learning. You have the
Mhm.
experience, and then you reflect and you analyze that experience, and then you take that information that you gain, and hopefully you learn from it and you apply it towards the next experience.
Mhm.
And that's what holistic recovery is all about, right? It's looking at the person not just as you have the affliction of addiction, right? No, it's, well, what are the reasons? What's the underlying causes? Why did you feel isolated? How do we fix that, right? We work on the tenets of holistic wellness. So that includes spiritual / intellectual health, right? I like adding the intellectual because you don't need, as far as I'm concerned, to believe in a God or an afterlife. You can intellectualize being a good person, right? Morality did. The ancient Greeks intellectualized morality,
They sure
right? And
did.
ethics, right? You had, Plato on his soapbox talking about morality, right? Socrates. So it doesn't have to be a spiritual, but an intellectual enterprise. Then there's the physical health of it, right? If I'm, especially as an opiate addict, like, I have a strong aversion to pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, right? But if I'm doing the things I have to do on a daily or weekly basis to maintain my physical health, I physically feel better, right? My back's not hurting as much. So when you're feeling physically 100%, you're better adapted to deal with life struggles without reaching for that drink or drug, right? Um, we do emotional health, mental health. We talk about all these things. And then some of the ones that aren't as common is we talk about relational health, right? Your relationship, not just to other people, but also to the environment and also to yourself. We talk about occupational health, right? If your job sucks and you're there, I mean, right, we spend so much time at our jobs, but there are ways and tools and exercises that you can incorporate into your life that will make your job feel better, right? So a lot of it, maybe you want to call it like Jedi mind tricks. It is what it is, right? But it works, and if it works, why not promote it, and why not, put these opportunities to learn about these things out there? So that's what we're really hoping to do with HoliHub. Just look at a person as a very complex 360-degree being, and every aspect of that being needs to be nurtured in order for us to work at our highest potential and be our most balanced and in tune with nature and the world around us.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's amazing, and it's really dope how things can be birthed out of our own personal recovery journey that can also be the seeds for other people to recover and find their own specific path. To all the 12 steppers out there, like I'm in 12 step. That's the foundation of my recovery. And while you were talking, one of the things that that kind of like came to my mind, a couple of things came to my mind when you were talking. One, like, why do we give rats heroin water? Like why do they still do that? But a second thing was, like, 12 step gave me a way to live, like a way to live that I previously didn't have, a method for living. And then, once I'm given a method for living, like, then there's like the life. And I'm responsible for curating, creating, developing, cultivating that life, And so, like, that life is like, okay, it's just the same as the life was before. But now I just go to these meetings, and that's like what I'm cool with, and dope. But now, for like, that wasn't the case for me. Like, for me, it was like, okay, well, I like music. Well, I kind of want to do it professionally. Well, I like communication. I like meditation. I like yoga. I'm a parent. I want to learn how to eat better. I want to learn how to be a better friend. I want to learn how to be codependent, how to be a good partner. Like, how can I show up for my mom? Like, there was all of these things that was given to me once I was given a way of living that allowed for me to show up in life without like using drugs and alcohol. And to, like, even to your point where it's like, there's the sobriety and there's the recovery. What's interesting about like my path is that, like, if it wasn't for the sobriety, I probably wouldn't have been led to, like, the desperation that sobriety led me to, or the desperation that addiction led me to seek something other than that, which happened to be sobriety, which led me to like the recovery process. And it's just so cool, like, but with HoliHub being on the Phoenix app and, all the other organizations that are on there now what is accessible to people who maybe find that path or a similar path that leads them to, like, all of the things that are available to figure out, like, okay, well, what does life look like now? And it's really cool that, like, your personal experience led you to developing HoliHub, a space where people can kind of have that conversation. Like you've mentioned offline, some unique events, like, you got one coming up for Thanksgiving, a cooking event where, you're cooking together, and it's like, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, Bryce, thank you for bringing that up. So, all the different tenets of holistic wellness, nutrition is a big one, right? And you don't realize that when you're eating fast food every day or living off like Dunkin' Donuts or like these crappy protein shakes, which is what I was doing in my addiction. I'm like, oh, I'm not eating food, but at least I'm getting my caloric intake with these healthy shakes, which have like 80 grams of sugar in them. And you're just like, why do I feel like crap all the time? And you don't put two and two together. Your body gets used to it. And our bodies are incredible, incredible organisms that really heal and will adapt to what you're putting in it.
Yep.
What I've realized as I've taken a more holistic approach and become healthier in general and just more aware of what's going into my body, right? Not just what I'm not putting into my body, which is the drugs and alcohol, right? But also what I am taking into my body. Nutrition is a huge part of just feeling good, like a baseline of like wellness, like just like, people are like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I feel fine. Like, where is that fine? Is that fine up here? Is that fine down here? Right. And if you're eating shitty food, your fine's going to be down here. And if you're paying attention to what you're putting into your body, the less processed food, less dyes, things that are illegal in almost every other country to put in your food are legal here. And if you look, there's something trending on social media with, I think it's maybe Kellogg's, where they're trying to get them to put the same ingredients in the US as they do in Europe. And the list of ingredients is like triple in the US than it is in Europe, because in Europe, you're not allowed to use a lot of these ingredients because they have detrimental effects on your health and on your mental health. It affects your brain.
You definitely just put a hit out on that box of Frosted Flakes on top of the refrigerator.
So, and it's not about not doing it. It's just knowing, right? Just be aware. It's okay if you want to choose to eat that way, right? As much as you want, or you want to use it as, a way to, as like a cheat day or whatever it is, but just the awareness is really what's important, right? Make an aware, a decision that the facts.
I feel that way about alcohol. Like, I think it's informed consent, like when I think about drinking,
Exactly.
it was like the things I was afraid of the first time I drank was that I might throw up and like how embarrassing and gross, and that I might get in trouble, which that's, the forever fear. And honestly, like, you knew that there were people who were alcoholics out there, but they never in a million years did I know that this was like the kind of things that alcohol can do to you, and like the like true addictive nature, and the way it increases, your cancer risk and stuff like it. And all these things, exactly like you said, I feel like this is the through line that made me excited about talking to you to begin with, is like, none of that means that anybody has any right to tell you what to do. Like, if you, choose, like, you get to define, in my mind, you get to define your recovery. And like, my husband, who I love more than anyone in the world, like he still drinks, and he, is comfortable with how he does that. And like, that's not my place at all to tell somebody how, I only decide for me. But when I did first decide, it would have been nice to know more information. Saying that, I can hear the voice, the whatever 20-something-year-old in my head, like I would have listened to you, you dummy,
Right.
but
Right.
still, and
Yeah,
I
cool.
like the idea of just a community in general where you can kind of look to all these different corners of wellness and different corners of self-care, not in a way that it's like we have figured it out and everybody needs to do this or else you're wrong, but in a, hey, we have this like buffet of ways to love yourself, and like however you fill up your, metaphorical plate, like, is a way that we will celebrate for you because we're just so glad that you're here,
And that's exactly it. It's not a one size fits all approach because
No.
we're all so unique, right? Our
Right.
problems are unique, our experiences are unique, and even our addictions are unique to an extent,
Mhm.
right? So there's like really three major parts to HoliHub, and one of them is the support, right? The community. Community is important. The other one is educational. We want to bring some of this information to people's awareness that nutrition does affect how you feel. It affects your moods, right? If you're eating a lot of sugar, you're going to crash, and then you're going to feel depressed, and then you're going to look for something. Why am I so depressed? Right? What can I do to fix that? And if you're in addictive mentality, you're looking for a quick fix, right? And then the last part of it is actual actionable tools and skills that we send you home with, right? So Bryce mentioned this nutrition course. We have a workshop coming up. It's our second workshop. Our first workshop was a meditation workshop. We got such a great response, both how to meditate as like a scheduled meditation, but also how to use some of those techniques to bring you down from like a 10 of anger, or like I'm about to lose my shit on my kids, and like how do I bring that back in, and through deep breathing and intention. We had a great response to that. The next workshop is a nutrition on a budget workshop, because when you talk about nutrition, the first thing people say is I can't afford it, or I just don't know enough about it. Well, we're going to take care of both those things for you with this workshop, which is we're having a nutritionist come in and talk to you in general terms about things that you should look up, actually look at ingredients and try and stay away from, because, and they'll also discuss why you want to stay away from them, like the actual physiological effects that some of these compounds that we eat, the effects that it has on us, on our emotions, on our ability to regulate, on our moods, even on our ability to think clearly, right? So that's the first part of it. Then we're actually going to take people and teach them, okay, you want to be on a budget. Nutrition organic is more expensive. It is. You pick and choose, right? You don't have to do everything 100%. I know that's hard for a lot of us to hear, right? But no one's perfect, right? So we all do what we can. But there are ways to make it less expensive. Instead of buying, a chicken that was already quartered for you, it's substantially cheaper to buy a whole chicken and then quarter it yourself and season it yourself. Well, most people are intimidated by that. So we're actually teaching you on a whole chicken how to quarter a chicken and how to spice it and season it in a way that's healthy, that's affordable, and it's going to be delicious. So we're doing all of this in a workshop, and it'll be like cooking show style. And then at the end, we take everyone's raw meal and we put it in the oven, and we already have it pre-cooked, so it'll come right out. And we're going to have a family style dinner for Friendsgiving, right? So now you have the community, you have the education, and you have the hands-on skills that you take home with you. So we're not only teaching you how to quarter the chicken, we're teaching you how to save the broth so you can make it into a soup or use a seasoning later on. So you use every piece of the chicken. And we're also, of course, going to have different options for vegetarians, and so we're as inclusive as possible. But there are ways. They're just, they might be a little bit more time consuming. But when you weigh the time versus the benefit, oftentimes I think that you're going to come out ahead, and your body will adjust to clean eating, and you'll start feeling better to a point where when you do splurge and go out for like those McDonald's fries, you're going to eat them, and then through intentional consumption or experiential learning, right, really analyzing how you feel afterwards, you're going to be like, oh, that tasted really good. That salt, that I don't know what McDonald's does with their fries, but right.
They're delicious.
But then also like, wow, I didn't feel so good the next morning. I was sluggish, right? It was hard to get out of bed. And you don't realize that these things are connected until somebody tells you to start noticing. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get people to notice. So we're trying to put on workshops, and we're trying to make them either free or as close to free as possible. I think with this nutrition on a budget workshop and cooking class, it's going to be maybe a $10 to $15 cost to people. Most of it will be subsidized, but that's going to be the cost of your meal, right? That's not going to, you'll basically cover your own meal, and we'll cover the space, and we'll cover the nutritionists, and we'll cover the chefs who are coming in to cook beforehand and to teach you how to just become more skilled in the kitchen. And you just cover your meal, and that's the goal. And we're going to be raising money to do types of workshops like this. And again, we want to give it for free. The meditation workshop is usually $150 a person, and we were able to give it away for free.
It's amazing.
So it's really just about increasing the accessibility of this information and of these practices, so that we're in the best position to fight those urges and to deal with the trauma of life, right? Because there's no escaping it.
No, that's amazing. And you made me think a little deeper too, because it's so interesting how you think you got to do it one way. So I'm about to go to Westbourne or Whole Foods, or what's it, Wakelands? What is it called? Wegmans?
Wegmans?
Yeah.
Wegmans.
And I'm about to just get everything organic, and then it's, that to hit the counter and it's like $500. Like, dang. But it's like, oh, if I get the whole chicken, then it's less, and I can quarter it myself. Or if I buy the chicken alive, then it's even,
oh my God!
No,
less. Stop immediately. Stop immediately.
Listen, I'm no judgment here, but I can't do that. It's not for me.
No. Well, and just like, I'm just thinking of, folks in the community that are just like, dude, I'm just trying to not die today, man. Like, I feel like there's so many layers of what you're doing, right? Because you've got, options to begin with. Because I know that you have just like community like gatherings and meetings. And then you also have, other pieces of the puzzle, like you said, like the whole mind, body, spirit kind of holistic, if you will. Toolkit. And the beautiful thing about that is that you can get a lot of, like, different people can get different things from those tools. So there might be somebody that just doesn't have anyone else to be with, during a holiday, and to like, create a meal and eat together is like, just that's the ticket, and for somebody else who's digging into nutrition, that's amazing. And I'm picturing myself like year 1 and 2, and also a little bit last week of when I'm struggling, and it's like, if I'm going to eat this whole bag of freaking Sour Patch Kids, like, guess what a step in the right direction this is compared to what like this other part of my brain wants to do. And that is fine, because like, it's about learning about yourself and knowing that you have all these tools and you have community to lean on, and it's the power of like trusting yourself enough to have the choice. And I just think that feels to me like the thing that you're offering that I love is just like choice and community.
Thank you for that. And I have 2 stories from our meetings. We meet in person once a week in Denver, near Denver University, and then we also have a virtual meeting on Mondays. And
seen that on the Phoenix app?
Yeah, we just added, which is also on the Phoenix app, we have a digital wellness meeting Saturday mornings, which I think is very unique, right? But you can't deny that our digital habits and how much time we spend on the screens and social media, like, you can't deny that it affects our mental health and our moods. So we think it's maybe 10 years ago, digital health wasn't part of a holistic approach, but today it is.
Right.
So we have those meetings as well. So the in-person meetings, we have people who are AA big book thumpers who have 20 years of recovery. And then we have people who've been struggling in and out. And like, one of our attendees, he just got 60 days for the first time. He's been trying for years.
It's amazing.
And he really does. It's amazing. And he credits HoliHub as
Yay.
an integral part of his recovery, right? And we're not trying to take away and compete with anything. We're just trying to add a supplement. Like, how do we help? How do we be of service? And, you know, this one person in particular who just got his 60 days, we had one of the meetings, we're talking about nutrition, and he's like, yeah, I just like killed a whole box of Frosted Flakes last night. He's like, and I feel like shit today.
Respect.
But we're all like, but you know what, man? Like, there's a lot of sugar in alcohol. Like, when you're not drinking for 60 days, your body's still craving some of that sugar. It makes sense. And we're not here to be like you said, like, it's much better than the alternative, right? We're not here to judge you about what, you know, the fact that you're eating sugary cereal. Like, we're just happy that you're here and that you're open to learning about what will make you feel good moving forward. Another story that I can relay is that because we're all pathways, not everyone in the room is abstinent, right? And we had someone share about how they had this party coming up. It's an annual party. They go every year. And, you know, drinking was his drug of choice, and he knows he can't drink. He's like, but, you know, I might, you know, maybe do a little Molly. And I'm like, you know, if you're going to do anything, just again, experiential learning, mindful consumption, think about how you feel. Why are you doing it? Are you trying to escape? Is it actually working? But also, here's a fentanyl testing strip. Right? Now, if you were in a traditional 12-step meeting, you wouldn't be able to share about that. Right? You would be, you know, outside issues, out of the room, right? Or you're not currently trying to be sober, out of the room. But because he was able to share about that, right, we were able to give him a fentanyl testing strip, which was used that weekend, and it saved people's lives. And she didn't eat Molly. He had it for his friends. So it was just like what if that conversation didn't happen?
Yeah.
Right? What if he didn't feel supported? What if he didn't feel comfortable enough to bring it up in a meeting? Right? One, maybe, you know, as soon as we're told not to do something, we want to do it. Right? So nobody told him don't do it. Right? So maybe if we were like, don't do it, he would have ended up doing it. Or maybe he would have not, you know, he would have never received the fentanyl testing strip, which would have, and it tested positive for fentanyl. So like,
literally saved a life.
Like, literally saved a life. And it really just came from being open and allowing people to be honest and not judgmental and not wagging our finger like you're doing it wrong. Because, you know, I don't know if you're doing it wrong. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong. I'm just doing the best I can. And we're all learning together. Yeah. And that's a big part of our community is I don't have all the answers. I'm just facilitating. You know, I'm very grateful. I feel very grateful and, you know, humbled to be in a position to facilitate. But that's all I am. I'm just trying to bring people together. And I think together we can figure it out.
Love it. Love it. So, people listening, Liz has to jet because she has more important things to do than be on the show with us. No playing, just playing. Look at her face.
My heart.
I know this whole thing is like making her skin crawl that she has to dip. But we love you, Liz. Thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you on the next episode as we continue this episode. So, HoliHub hasn't been what you've always done. What was your occupation before HoliHub?
It's still my occupation. I'm a corporate attorney, man.
A corporate attorney.
I do advertising and marketing law for one of the largest tech companies in the world. I'm sure our app is on your phone. I would be shocked if it wasn't. It's on the phone of like hundreds of millions of people around the world. So that's what I do for a living, but it was not a straight line, man. I was what they called an at-risk youth. I grew up in a very strict religious household, and I asked a lot of questions, and I did a lot of experimenting, and I got kicked out of my house by the time I was like 15. I grew up in New York City, so I was sleeping on subway platforms. I was playing ball at the Cage on West 4th Street, and then, you know, and then sleeping in the park. Definitely was at risk, and I had a lot of at-risk habits, including drug misuse and using it as a way of coping because I didn't have coping skills. And, that was the first time I lost my community where I got kicked out of the house. I got ostracized by the religious community that was really all I knew growing up. Ultimately, I got depressed over it. I stopped showing up to school. I ended up getting kicked out of high school. So I'm a high school dropout. So that's where it started. I'm a high school dropout, but I hadn't completely lost my way. And then, okay, I knew a degree, a high school degree, right? So I got my GED. I was able to get my shit together enough, do the paperwork, and get my GED. Applied at community college. I went to community college. And then, life's a roller coaster. There are ups and downs. And on my way up, I transferred from community college to Rutgers University in New Jersey, which is a pretty respectable state school in New Jersey. And I partied hard. I was partying hard, but I was able to keep my shit together. I towed the line, and also with the help of friends. Like sometimes they would get me up for class or sign me in or do my homework when I was not capable of doing so. And that was my abuse stage, or misuse stage of addiction. And then after college, I worked for a year in a nonprofit organization, a big nonprofit in New York City. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I decided I was going to take the LSATs, which was the entry exam to get into law school. You have to take it. And then based on your scores, you apply to different, tiers of law school. If you do really well, you apply to the top tier. And then if you're more in the middle tier and bottom tier. And I just took the test because my roommate in college was doing it. And I'm a good test taker and I did well. And I got a scholarship to a top tier law school. And so I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a lawyer. And I was like, do I want to be a lawyer? I don't know, but I don't know what I want to do, right? To those listening at home, if you're not sure you want to be a lawyer, I don't suggest doing it. It's a lot of work for something that you're not sure you want to do. Yeah, it was a lot of work for something that you're not sure you're going to want to do. And leading up the summer before I started law school is where I really fell into an opioid addiction. I had hurt myself the winter before snowboarding. So I got prescribed Percocets because I tore something in my shoulder. On top of that, I started, so I was using those as prescribed, and then I started misusing those outside of the prescription use. I started using it recreationally. I, started seeing this girl who would also use it recreationally with me, and it snowballed from there. And as my addiction, my full-blown physical dependence on opiates started, I started law school at the same time. And law school, especially a top-tier law school in New York City, is cutthroat. There's stories that people will rip pages out of books in the library so you can't read the right answers. You can't study the right answers. People are crazy, man. People are crazy.
It's competitive?
It's so competitive because you get ranked. You get ranked within your class. So it's like you're a college football player, trying to make your way through the combine and the draft, and you want to be ranked number one,
Yeah.
And in order to be ranked number one, you step on people to get there. It's very cutthroat. Also, these top tier schools, they're just churning out attorneys. Their stats are padded by your bar passage rate and the jobs that people get when they come out. So they don't really care about you. You're just a number. They just want you to pass and get a prestigious job so their ranking, the law school's ranking, can go up. And I got, between the pressure and the lack of coping skills and, my existing propensity to abuse substances and then getting into a very addictive substance like opiates, I just didn't have a chance, man. I was missing classes. I was taking final. I remember snorting and oxy before my exam, and then nodding out in the middle of my final and going back to the bathroom to snort Adderall to like even it out.
Mm.
And then I would come back to the exam and I was too jittery now from the Adderall, so I'd have to go back to the bathroom. I was just constantly trying to find a way to balance out the drug I'd already just done. And never did I think, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that to begin with. No, I just had to find the right balance. If I just found the right concoction, it would work.
Yeah, we
And
got a
dude,
lot.
man,
We got a lot in common.
yeah, I thought, I was cocky about it too. I was well researched and well versed in the science, and I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, might as well be a doctor, and and dude, it took me to my knees, man. First I lost my scholarship. Then I pretty much, I don't know how I didn't get Fs, but I got like Cs and Ds, and that was going to hurt the law school's numbers because I wasn't a short shot to pass the bar and get a good job. So they kicked me out, asked me to leave, and I was working in the music industry, producing events in New York City, mixed media events, so I thought I was a rock star. I was partying like a rock star, but let me tell you, Bryce.
You sure?
Listen, man, I can't play a lick. But I do really enjoy being around creative people to this day.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it, and I like facilitating and bringing creative people together so they can make art. But I just had this warped perception of who I was. I thought I was on top of the world. I thought I was on this trajectory to be this like powerful super attorney, and I could, work hard and play hard. And that's the New York City, mentality. Work hard, play hard. And that's what I did. And I did both really hard. And at a certain point, I couldn't work anymore. It wasn't working. And I got kicked out of school. And then I had all these student loans that pretty much went to nothing, right? Because I didn't have the degree. Shit with my relationship was very toxic, and I lost my apartment because I couldn't pay rent. I was like crashing at a buddy's couch in like Philly, and me and my girl, we were talking about getting help, and two of my best friends died of overdoses during this time. And the first one died, and he was, I was devastated, but I was able to rationalize that, well, he was shooting dope and I'm not doing heroin. I'm just doing pills. And meanwhile, at his wake, I'm in the parking lot snorting pills. But I didn't have the self-awareness to be like, oh, I'm going to be next. And then, maybe 9 or 10 months later, I'm at a music festival with another one of my best friends. And me and him are partying all night. And we separate at like 5 a.m. And we both go back to our respective, tents and cars or hotels. We were doing the exact same thing, and he didn't wake up. And when that happened, the facade that I was any different completely was just broken down, because I couldn't be like, oh, well, he was doing heroin and I'm not doing heroin, or he's using needles and I'm not. Because me and my second friend, we were doing exactly the same thing. And I was just lucky enough to wake up and he didn't.
Sheesh. And
that one threw me for a fucking loop, man. And I mean, I credit both of those people. I think about them all the time. Carl and Pink. I think about them all the time, and I truly believe that they sacrificed in order to save my life. What happened to them and their death, that after Pink died, that's what got me to rehab. And I talked about rehab before, but I was always like, nah, I can do it on my own. And I did a few times. I kicked it on my own, and I would go through withdrawals, and I would, do all the research and take all the supplements that were going to help as best as I could. And I would kick for, 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, but I would always fall. Either me or my girl at the time, one of us would stumble. And then, I mean, honestly, we were probably hoping the other one would, so we could just do it too and not take responsibility.
Yeah.
But so I remember I was living on a couch in Philly, and I would come up to New York once a week because I was still in therapy. And this one time I invited my parents to my therapy session, which I'd never done before. And we were pretty estranged at the time, and my therapist didn't even know that I was a drug addict. And I had my therapist and my parents there. Of course, I'm like 15 minutes late, right? So they're both sitting in this office like, what the fuck are we doing here? And then I show up and I'm like, listen, I've been lying to all of you. I have the drug problem and I think I'm going to die if I don't get help. And, there's a lot of tears. My parents were crying and my therapist was there. I'm glad I did it that way. And, the question at the end of the session was, how can I be helped? And I'd had a friend who had gone to rehab before, and I'd already reached out to him, and he helped me get in touch with the rehab he went to. So I had already done all the paperwork and everything. I needed help financially to get in there. And so my parents were able to help a little bit. My grandparents, so I had to come clean to my whole family. My grandparents helped a little bit, and then I sold my car to pay for the rest of it. And it was, to save my life, I needed to do it. And
that's a hell of an investment,
yeah.
I went to rehab on my insurance because I was working at one of the big three. I'm in Detroit, so like I had the ability to go, but like to sell your car and also to like involve your family in a way that's like y'all need financial assistance. That's a hell of an investment on the front end.
Dude, it was so hard to do because I was very proud of the fact that, my parents kind of cut me off and kicked me out, and fuck them. I'm going to do this on my own and I'm going to survive, Not only survive, but I'm going to thrive. And then to come back pretty much on my knees, beat down, and just be like asking for help.
If you don't mind me asking, one of the hardest things. How old were you?
How old was I? I was 29 years old.
29, okay.
29 years old. I lost my scholarship. I told you I had my own production company, lost that. Lost my scholarship to law school, got kicked out of law school, lost my place to live. Like I said, I was pretty much living in a drug den on a couch in Philly. Like not even in my hometown, at 29 years old. And I was probably like 140 pounds soaking wet. I'm 5'10", so like that's not healthy. So, and listen, to give my parents a ton of credit, they helped what they could. I grew up, they were both working for the Board of Education, they're teachers, so like we didn't have money growing up. They did the best they could, but they sacrificed to help me get to rehab. And, to this day, we have a great relationship now. But at that point, we had no relationship. And that's one of the things that I really give credit to the 12-step program and then holistic recovery. Without it, I would have never gotten my family back.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but again, it wasn't a straight line. I got kicked out of law school. I went to rehab, went to sober living. Liz said something. Liz said something? Maybe you said one of you said something about different programs and who's right and which program's right for you versus the right one total. I was in sober living and I was fucking miserable. We were
Mm.
talking about sobriety versus recovery. I was sober for like 6 months and I was miserable. And I went to my house manager, this big tattooed Mexican dude with all these gel tats on him. And I go to him, I'm like, Danny, I'm like, dude, if this is sobriety, I don't want it. I'm
Mm.
like, I don't want it. He's like, well, are you ready to listen? And at that point, I threw up my hands. I'm like, Danny, just tell me what to do. I'm miserable. I don't like, just tell me what to do. I'll try anything. And he made me clean toilets because I had an ego and I had to be humble. He made me go. I was going to 2 meetings a day. Most people had to go to one, right? I was applying for a job for a management position for like a big box like retailer. Had a management job. Mind you, I had like 2 years of law school under my belt, but that didn't count for anything, right? But I applied for a management position. He's like, no, you need a floor position.
Mm.
So I had to take the lower position, even though I was qualified for the managerial position. I needed to be humbled because I was cocky and I thought I knew better. And I thought because I had this education, because I had this experience, I was better than the other people I was in sober living with than I was in rehab with. Took me until after this experience with Danny to realize that like we're all on an even playing field. I'm literally sleeping in the bed next to you. Like there's no difference.
Yeah.
I'm not any better than anybody else here. And then the last thing he told me, which this changed my life. And honestly, this is probably the precursor. This is what got HoliHub. If you want to take the long view, this is what got HoliHub up and running. He made me say yes to any opportunity to be of service. I was not
Mm.
allowed to say no.
Yeah.
Someone needed a ride to the airport. I was in sober living in LA, right? And if you've ever been to LA, taking someone to the fucking airport, man, is like the worst kind of hell, right? And I had to drive people to the airport. I had to pick people up from the airport. I had to fill in for people's commitments at meetings when they couldn't. I had to take my own commitments at meetings. I could not say no if someone asked me for a favor. And I thought it was so stupid. And looking back on it, it's probably the single piece of advice that has made the biggest difference in my life, which is be of service.
Mm.
It gets you out of your own head, man. When you're thinking about what I could do for you, I'm not thinking about, the fight I had yesterday or this thing I could have done better today, or why is my life not as good as it should have been, right?
Yeah.
But being of service, it takes away all that noise because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about me. I'm not thinking about what you need. I remember while I was in sober living, my grandfather passed away. So I had to go back to the East Coast. I had to go back to the East Coast for the funeral. And, funerals and grief and depression, like all good reasons to get fucked up,
Yeah.
Um, but I was scared. I was scared. I'd worked so hard and I'm like, am I going to be able to go there and keep my recovery going, keep my sobriety going? And I went there with a plan. And my plan was, you are going to be of service. That is your purpose in going home. You're not there to grieve. You're there to comfort other people who are grieving.
Mm.
You're there to help out around the house. You're there so your mom does not need to clean up after the guests. You're there so your sisters don't need childcare for your nieces and nephews, right? Like you're there to be of service, and that's it. That's your only role there.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset I went with. And I could say that weekend was probably a pivotal moment in regaining my relationship with my family.
Mm. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I almost got the goosebumps on my arm. That the be of service is the thing that has connected me with something bigger than myself. because I have
Yeah.
plans, and this has connected me to the plans that are most times even bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. And it puts
Mhm.
me in contact and hand in hand with like my neighbor in a way that, like you said, gets me out of my problems, gets me out of my I mean, when I say this, don't hear this crazy, but my ambitions,
Yeah.
the ambitions are important, and sometimes they get so become so big that it's like it's too much, and
Yeah, it takes over.
yeah, and then you get to moving. I heard something recently where if you're rushing, you are in fear,
Mm.
and if you are in fear, most times you're not thinking about anybody else but you. And so
Oh
slow
yeah,
down and get into service. And
that's
then that
great.
will help to alleviate some of that anxiety and help to serve in a way that gets you outside of yourself. And it's like, yo, that's phew. So to hear your
Yeah, I,
story,
lo-
to hear your story,
I love that.
that's amazing. That's amazing how you
I think,
rekindle your relationship with your family and how you were able to go to this funeral where, yeah, we celebrate the end of life with a drink or
hmm
or suppress some of the emotions that come up in grief with whatever substances that help us to cope. And for you to like prioritize, you know what, I'm going in my purpose to be of service, and you were able to do that. Not only were you able to go and attend this funeral, but like you were able to show up for people in a way that kind of rekindled those relationships. That's amazing.
yeah, it showed them progress, right? I wasn't by I was very far from perfect, but up until that point, everything I ever did was for me, and I
Mm,
didn't care who I hurt, you know. And it showed them a different side of me, a side that wasn't as available to them.
mm,
Um, and the service piece, I got to tell you, like Holy Hubs, we started about 6 months ago, and it was because I had worked so hard, and I have my holistic practices on a daily basis. I have maintenance that I do on a daily basis, and then I have maintenance that I do on like every other week, and then weekly, and I have all these things that try to keep me humble and balanced and grounded to protect myself from falling into old and dysfunctional patterns and habits, right? But I was doing all these things, right? Meditation, exercise, nature, nutrition, friendships, fellowship, all these things. And I really worked hard to put the pieces of my life back together. And 6 months ago, if you looked at me, you would think I had it all together. And the fancy job, the great relationship, the awesome dog sleeping back there, Um, everything seemed on the outside superficially that it was going great. And yet I was so unfulfilled inside.
mm,
And I was feeling squirrely and I couldn't figure it out. So I doubled down on my practices. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to meditate twice a day, or I'm going to add an extra, workout session or an extra, walk in the mountains or something. I doubled down and it still wasn't working. And I'm like, what can I do different? Because I really thought I was doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Like, this is my recovery program. Like, I
mm,
have my holistic recovery program. I'm doing it all. Why do I still feel squirrely? Why do I still feel unfulfilled? And I took a trip. I like to snowboard. So when I want to clear my head and kind of become one with nature, I go snowboarding by myself. Because to be on
okay.
that mountain by yourself with no noise and it's just you and the elements and nature, it's just a beautiful thing for me. It reminds me how really insignificant I really am when I'm
Mm,
just a speck on this giant mountain.
yeah.
And so I go up to the mountains to clear my head with the intention of trying to figure out what am I lacking? What's missing? I feel so unfulfilled. They talk about the God space hole, right? I have
Mm,
God in my life, but there was a hole and I couldn't figure out what it was. And driving up to the mountains, my car skids out and I come within an inch of hitting this trailer, but I miss it. And I end up coming out of the skid and nothing happens, completely unscathed. Gets my heart rate up. I'm like breathing a little heavy, like sweating, but like completely unharmed. Okay. Let me keep driving. Right. I get up to the mountains. I stop where I'm sleeping. The next day I go to the mountains by myself and I'm riding and I ride pretty hard and I push myself pretty hard and I'm in the trees of this, tough trail and I catch my heel and I fall and I start sliding down the mountain head first in amongst trees. I'm like, this is how people die skiing and snowboarding. You hit a tree. You hit an immovable object at a high speed. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a helmet, right? This is how people go. And I'm sliding down and it's happening in slow motion. And I end up instead of hitting a tree, I hit this like little sapling that was maybe like 3 inches in diameter. And it stops me from sliding. I must have slid like 30, 40 feet. And I hit nothing but this little sapling. And that gets me thinking, right? 2 near-death experiences within like a 24-hour period. And I'm like, what would my life be if I did die today? Like, what would my life be? What would be people? How would people eulogize me? And it's a weird thing to think about, right? It's a weird thing to think about what happens, how you're remembered after you're dead. And I'm just like, am I just really going to be remembered as someone who helped a big corporation make more money? Like, does that encapsulate my purpose on this earth? And I'm like, there's got to be something else. And it made me realize that if I could just have a positive impact on one person's life, and they came to my funeral and stood up and said, Shimi helped me in so-and-so area. Like, that's so much better than a coworker standing up and be like, hey, he was a great negotiator of this contract, like, and it brought me back to being in sober living with Danny telling me to be of service. And I'm like, that is what is missing from my life. I completely stopped being of service to the community. Meaning, like, if a friend asks me for a favor, like, I like to feel that I'm generous with my time and happy to help and things like that. But it's not the same as when you're being of service in the recovery community, not because you know someone, but just because you know someone needs help.
Yeah.
And that started the wheels turning. And I'm like, I have this experience in recovery that I think is a little bit unique, but I don't think it's as unique as I don't think it's uncommon. I think it's unique, but not uncommon. And I think that while 12 Steps is an amazing program, it's not for everyone. And I'm sure there are people falling through those cracks who don't feel like they have a home for their recovery. I'm like, what if I can provide that? What if I can provide a welcoming, non-judgmental recovery space based on holistic wellness and practices that I've incorporated into my life that have helped me rebuild my life into something, not forget about rebuild, like I rebuild everything I lost and then, supersede that, like go beyond that into a life that I never thought I could have. And that's what I needed to do in order to feel fulfilled. So in a way, it's a little selfish, right?
Yeah.
But it's the benefit that I received from the community, from the HoliHub community, the things I've learned from this incredible group of people, the way that they hold me accountable, the way that they give me a different perspective that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. It's really added so much to my life. So while people are like, oh, thank you so much for doing this, I'm like, no, thank you for letting me do this. Thank you for participating. I keep telling myself when I was starting it, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Because like my biggest fear, because of the ego was, oh, I'm going to do these things and no one's going to care. I'm going to, facilitate this meeting. I'm going to find a space. I'm going to put work and effort into it because I still have my day job. This is all, I just do this because I'm passionate about it as like, as my like side hustle,
Yeah.
that's, just to make a difference in people's lives, to be impactful. I don't
Yeah.
want to be an influencer. I don't want to influence anyone. I want to impact people
Mm.
in a positive way. And that's where being of service has brought me. And that's how HoliHub, came into an existence. And then the partnership with the Phoenix, because one of the things about, when you're first getting into recovery is how am I ever going to have fun again? And it's like the
Right.
Phoenix offers all these fun activities with like-minded people who don't need to get fucked up to have fun.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. I appreciate the partnership with the Phoenix so much. I appreciate this conversation with you, Bryce, and with Liz, even though she had to jump. Feel a little
Yeah.
diss. Just kidding. Love you, Liz.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you for coming and hopping on the pod and being so transparent about your journey, as well as for the work that you do with HoliHub. And yet, yeah, it's a bit around here we call it selfish selflessness.
I like that.
Kind of that symbiotic relationship with us in the community, where it's like, okay, we do stuff that serves the community and inherently serves us, and it just becomes this thing where it's like a mutually beneficial act. But first and foremost, leading with service first. And it's amazing that your journey has led you here to be able to serve and impact the people that you have been able to. And hopefully those listening to this podcast, especially those who have made it this far, will listen and pop into the HoliHub space in the Phoenix app. If you haven't downloaded the Phoenix app yet, you can hop on your app store, wherever it's at, download the Phoenix app and hop in the partner spaces. Come hop in HoliHub and holler at Shimi. Let them know that you enjoyed this podcast episode and maybe some recommendations for programming that you want to see, or, pop into some of the existing programming. Come and join the community, because your community is right around the corner. And, whether it's the Phoenix or it's HoliHub or it's Ben's Friends or it's Recovery Dharma, if you find one of us, you find all of us on this app. So, yeah, man, this has been a dope conversation. And let us know where we can tap in with you after this conversation.
Awesome, Bryce. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
All right. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. And we will catch you next time. Same place, same time. Y'all take care.